Welcome back to the channel. We're doing another discussion. We're doing this time a little bit of a two-sided discussion. Should be fun. And I would expect one of these sites is going to be very unpopular. So this should be very, very fun. But I'm kind of curious to see what you guys think. Today, I actually had originally recorded a market update. What the hell is going on with Fusion World? I was going to do a Fusion World and Masters together. But I figured, you know what? We can milk it a little bit. We're gonna do separate. And besides, I don't know if the people who are into Masters like Fusion World, and I don't want to make people sit through stuff they don't care about. So we will just separate the videos and we will do two separate ones. But for Fusion World specifically, I did actually want to make a little bit of a preface video. And you might say, well, if this is not a market update, what are we talking about today? Well, today's video is this sudden massive interest in Fusion World a boon or a curse? Well, and you might say, obviously it's a curse. Product is being sold out immediately. I can't find it anywhere, and it's being scalped. And I agree to the extent, right? Obviously, I don't agree that scalping should happen, especially with newer sets. Again, if this was just happening to, oh shit, I don't have an Awakened Pulse. I think I have an Awakened Pulse box somewhere over there. If it was just happening to these older sets, realistically speaking, who the hell cares, right? This is not relevant to the meta. It's fine. But when it's happening to the newer sets, that's when I start having problems with it, because that's when you start having onboarding issues. And I will talk more about that in the con side once I do that argument, but that's where I have a problem. That's what we're seeing right now. Fusion World right now, obviously we'll talk more about this in the next video, but Fusion World right now is absolutely taking off. And it's not just the older stuff, again, like, or these special ones, obviously the manga sets, which you can imagine are being super hyped up. It is also any single one, even the newer one, right? Obviously, Saiyan's Pride, FBO8 is being super pumped up. Not good. So why is this a good thing? Obviously, from the most selfish perspective, my Smeagol, if I were to be literally wearing, do I have, oh my God, I do have it, the One Ring right there. If I was wearing the One Ring, if I was thinking full greed, the answer is obviously money. I'm a little bit of a caveman. I see line, I see value go up, I see line go up. I'm happy. Precious. But we have to look at it a little bit deeper. I know that for most people that is going to be essentially the answer. They just obviously they like seeing the value of their collection go up, right? But why are so many people saying this, right? There has to be something deeper. And the answer, in my opinion, is yes. How was Fusion World doing before this massive boom? This is what we have to look at, in my opinion. So beyond these two sets were very well received. And ironically enough, actually, I don't know if you guys, obviously I don't know when you guys joined, but before the massive hype, you could actually find this one for like 90 bucks. I got two of these for 90 each. Kind of insane if you think about it. Obviously right now they're going for like 250. But how was it doing beyond these two specialty sets, right? Well, the reality is, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, Fusion World was struggling. I'm just going to not put it lightly. I'm just going to say it outright. Fusion World was not doing very well. Was it dying? I don't want to say it like that extreme, but it definitely was lacking in interest, lacking in collectability, lacking in players, lacking in content. I mean, seriously, you could barely find anything before, right? Obviously, I'm saying before the hype. Right now, you're obviously going to see a bunch of it undervalued and, oh my God, buy this and buy this and, you know, all that massive shilling. But I'm saying before, you very rarely saw a lot of interest. And why is that the case, right? Again, we'll talk more about this in the next video. But why is that the case? Fusion World from its inception was kind of controversial. I'll just keep it real. A lot of people, here's the thing, right? The Dragon Ball card game was already very small. It was already a niche card game. And you're asking that already small fan base essentially to split even more. So it created very little interest, at least from the player base. And obviously from collectors, most collectors ended up sticking to Masters. And that's why you saw in Masters, the God Rares usually were very pricey. While in Fusion World, the 2/3 stars, or the 2-star, sorry, were usually like $200-300, right? Not almost like 2 to 3 times less in comparison. So the collectability, the players were all in, obviously, Masters. Why? Because they had much more history. If one of the two had to go, which one was more likely to go? Fusion World. So that is the state that Fusion World was in. And am I just pulling that out of my ass? No, I actually have the numbers. Don't worry. I'm not, hopefully none of you thought that, but I do have the numbers. So let's look at any set beyond Awakened Pulse. Awakened Pulse suffered it's the Bandai. If you know, you know. It's the Bandai treatment. The first set was absolutely cooked until they reprinted it. I'm not sure. We'll do a video about Gundam because Gundam is also, dude, TCGs are going absolutely crazy right now. We'll do a video about that. We'll do a video on Masters and Gundam. The second video on One Piece. We're doing the, what's it called? The market video in Fusion World, the Masters. We have a lot to catch up on. So definitely subscribe. But anyways, so that's what happens, right? Obviously, Awaken Pulse for a while ends up actually reaching like 250, right? So almost even the prices of right now, kind of crazy enough. And what ends up happening is obviously Bandai reprints it, and they end up obviously increasing production by a lot for the future sets, including Blazing Aura, Raging Roar, and these sets are not very well received because a lot of the hype is gone. A lot of that, like, oh my god, this insane prices. So it ends up leaving essentially and entirely depending on players slash collectors. And again, since most of them were in Masters, most sets going forward, essentially, I think like every single set, except again, the mangas, we talked a little about this, how these are exceptions because of the art, right? These are very unique. So most collectors, even Masters collectors, they don't care if they can't, they're not playing it. They like the art, right? Dragon Ball collectors, they don't care. They might not even know that it's a card game. They're like, what the hell is this card? I want it. I like it because they look cool. They're very unique. The only other set that did well in Fusion World was FB06. And that's because it was a very good set. And also because by that time, the boxes were doing so bad in Fusion World. We're talking Blazing Aura was like, what, $60, $50 for the longest time. Raging Roar. I bought 2 cases of Raging Roar for like 900. I don't even want to know how much that is. That's super cheap. And then you have Ultra Limit dropped to like 50. New Adventure 60. Again, Rival Clash is the only one I need. Even that one started off a little bit rough, right? But it ended up bouncing back. Again, because by then stores were so burnt that they weren't ordering as much Fusion World. Hell, and I don't know if this is how true this is. I've heard this from a couple of people, so I am kind of inclined to believe this is true. I've heard that a lot of stores were actually just ordering Fusion World just to have good numbers overall with their distributors for Bandai products so that they could get more One Piece. That's how bad Fusion World was, right? They were essentially, and that's why on release, if you'll notice, a lot of the times, even on Masters, you'll actually see this. On release, you'll notice like 1 or 2 stores just with like a bunch of supply and they're just dumping everything. I'm guessing because they just want to get more One Piece numbers, right? So that is the unfortunate reality of how Fusion World was doing before the hype. So in the most practical sense, obviously, yes, I do believe that this hype helped. It does have benefits. I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I know a lot of people will sit here and say like, oh my god, we're doing just fine before. The reality is Fusion World kind of wasn't doing that well. So is this a boom then? Is this 100% just a positive thing? Well, the reality is that it could be, but I am worried that it's going to lead to something negative. I'm worried that we're going to see possibly a repeat of Awaken Pulse. I worried that if this is artificial, I'm not saying it's fully artificial hype, right? I'm not. I definitely believe that the IP returning, obviously the series returning, just a lot of hype right now in Bandai card games mainly because of One Piece. And a lot of people are just trying to get into different ones. Obviously, we see this again in Gundam. So hopefully some of those people remain, right? But I am worried that if it is just artificial hype, what is going to happen once Bandai increases supply? Because what do you think is going to happen? Do you think Bandai is going to see this insane numbers, even for their newer sets? I wish I had a say in Sprite Box. Do you think they're going to see those numbers and just say, oh, well, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to increase production. Like, no, obviously they're eventually going to increase production. So what I am worried about is that if this demand isn't that organic, if people aren't really caring about collecting, they're not really wanting to play it, either or. Again, I love collecting sealed and singles. I mean, as a matter of fact, this is a perfect opportunity to showcase a little bit of Detour. But check this out. This is mainly my Fusion World collection. And then we have my Masters. Very, very nice. But humble brag. But anyways, so I love collecting both, right? But I am worried that a lot of the people who are just here mainly for the hype, are gonna leave immediately, right? Once they start seeing that increased supply. I do kind of worry about that. I am kind of worried that this is not going to be sustainable and that possibly we're going to see another Awaken Pulse situation. And you might say, what are you talking about? What happened? Okay, so we kind of talked a little bit, but what ended up happening again, boxes were, this is for the first set of FBO1, boxes were at 250. People were super hyped up. everyone wanted in a fusion world. And what ends up happening is once supply starts increasing and once the product actually becomes available, because there wasn't a strong foundation, especially because this was the first set. So obviously it had even less of a time to form that foundation. So maybe it will survive it. Maybe it will be better off because of after this. But I am kind of worried that it's going to happen, that since it didn't have the strong foundation, once these weaker sets started coming in and obviously this increased supply started coming in, that artificial hype dissipated, right? Obviously, once that money making opportunity started going away and there was no real demand for it. It ended up having like a 2-year slump essentially, again, except for like 3 sets. 3 sets out of like 10 didn't end up flopping. That's absolutely horrible, right? So I am kind of worried that it might lead to that. Something that might obviously offset it again is the time. We definitely have had more time to build an audience and build a core, what I like to call a core target audience that is going to stick with the game even in the downfalls, right? A lot of people are going to leave the game if they end up increasing, when they end up increasing supply, because that's just naturally the way of things, right? A lot of people are going to see that they can maybe flip before easy and they're going to see another target. Maybe Gundam takes off, I don't know, whatever it ends up taking off, they're going to go to that, right? That's how a lot of people see these TCGs, right? They just see them as opportunities. And again, I'm just worried that that is the majority of what's going on right now, and that afterwards we're going to see another massive slump. I don't know if Fusion World could survive another slump, right? So I'm kind of curious. Obviously, I did want to cover the 2 sites. Again, I didn't want to just say, oh, collector's bad, because first of all, you can see I am a collector, seal collector, a singles collector. I like to collect a little bit of everything. So obviously I'm not going to bout my collectors because that would be kind of hypocritical. And I do understand the point that I've seen a lot of people make. Mainly you will see these discussions on the Facebook group, by the way. That's where I got inspired to make this video. So I do see that point, right? Obviously, I definitely see a positive in the increased hype, in the increased interest in the game, in the increased interest in the IP itself, in collecting the IP, right? I think that's great. I think it's great that 2 stars are more expensive. I think they were very cheap. So I think those things are fine, right? They all starts are have a little bit more value. I think that's fine. But again, I do worry that's a pro side. I do worry in the con side that if it's too much of an artificial thing, that since the game doesn't have that much of a strong foundation, kind of like Masters does, Masters has literal more years of experience and history with players, right? So it's much more resilient in these downtimes. So I'm kind of worried that if we do go through another slump, I don't know if Fusion World is going to be able to survive. But I'm kind of curious. How do you guys feel about these massive boom in hype, scalping, whatever you want to call it? How do you feel about it? Obviously, again, I do want to know if you're a player, you're a vendor. I don't care, right? I welcome everyone. You're a vendor, you're a player, you're a store owner, you're a collector. You literally just saw this video and you didn't even know the Dragon Ball Horror card game. Kudos to you. Thanks for watching. And hopefully I'll see you for next video. Next video for Dragon Ball Fusion, where we will actually cover the boom. What the hell happened with this boom? Why is there such a massive interest in Dragon Ball? And also we will talk about the supply of Dragon Ball and why Bandai games in general. We touched a little bit on this in the One Piece video. So if you watch that one, you will tread a little bit of familiar grounds. But just on the nature of Bandai having so many IPs to juggle, it takes them a while to respond. So by default, they don't have the most stock usually. Kind of a shitty situation, right? A supply and demand literally just out of flux. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. Hopefully stay tuned. Hopefully I'll see you for the next one. Again, 1-2% both sides of the argument for this one. I'm kind of curious to see where you guys land. I'm guessing most people are going to land on the con side just based on popular sentiment, just what from what I see on Reddit / comments and stuff like that. Kind of curious again, and hopefully I'll see you next time.